Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here. Welcome to another episode of Capping the Card on NYRA Bets. Today, we're going to be going through Saturday's Saratoga card highlighted by the Diana Stakes. And thank you, everyone, for subscribing to the new NYRA Bets YouTube channel. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button to get race previews, full card analysis, a lot of specialty topics that we cover, in addition to wonderful tutorials about handicapping and betting. Well, joining me today is someone who I absolutely love following on social media. I love him as a person as well in real life. It's not just an online personality, and that is announcer for us at NYRA, Chris Griffin. Chris, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and do some capping for the Diana Day.
It's my pleasure. I mean, who wants to be on vacation, Matthew, right off of my announcing and have a little time off? I wanted to stay away from racing, but fantastic weekend, a great slate of races on Saturday, and miss you guys. You guys are up there a little bit further north than me right now, but it should be a great day of racing. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely, and we miss you too. And I should say, you will go down in the history books as the person who called the very first race of the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival at Saratoga in a rather ad hoc manner. And you developed one huge fan in that process, which is my father, who absolutely thought that was the best thing he's seen all year on television and tweeted about it and texted me about it about 15 times.
When you told me about that, though, I know how tough your dad is, and he's like very dialed in as far as racing. And I said, great. Now I have another thing to be nervous about here moving forward. But that's good foreshadowing, because that's actually going to be one of my selections, Illuminaire. I mean, how can I not pick that?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, we'll get to that horse in a little bit. So, well, listen, if you're new to this episode of Capping the Card, what myself and a guest do every week is we go through every race on the Saturday card and we give a top pick. Sometimes we give a value play or a second choice or just some other horses we're interested in. So, Chris, let's dive right into it. We'll start off with race number one, $80,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-olds going 5.5 furlongs on the dirt. And I went with the chalk. You went in a little bit of a different direction with a horse that at least does have a race under its belt. Talk to me a little bit about the number 2, Mischief Maxie.
Yeah, the condition obviously is the interesting part of this race, right? And talking about horses that when they went through the sale, it's got to be 50,000 or less. Yeah. So you do find some of these different types of 2-year-olds that get opportunities versus some of the higher priced yearlings and purchases. So Mischief Maxie, I will say this, and I've spent some time in PA and I've been able to see this horse up close. She's leggy. She's got some size to her, kind of like gangly size, if I could kind of say that, as I was standing next to her. And she looked like she was going to win that race. That debut race, she looked like she was going to win, and she got caught. You get Rosario aboard now. The number has to improve significantly. I just look at some of the other runners in the field and I say, okay, who do I think can improve? I know John Service trainees are going to improve second time out. And I don't want to start my 12 races on a Saturday with a favorite. I mean, I see that Dare to Breeze does make a lot of sense, controlling speed. I just worry about, kind of getting caught the same way that we saw. And then you see my value play there. But I'm going to stay away from the favorite. I think 4 to 5 is probably the right number on the 4. But that's going to be really short in the opener.
Yeah, it is. And, I wanted to kind of find a creative way to get around this. Ultimately, I landed on Dare to Breeze as my top pick. I think this one, the interesting thing to note, if people paid attention to opening day, of course, Sherbini, who won that race that Dare to Breeze was in, runs second in the Schuylerville. The horse that ran second that day, Strong State, comes back to win on opening day in a maiden special weight race. So lost to 2 very good horses. And Mark Cassie's Barn seems to be firing pretty well right now. And that's who this one is trained by, jockey by Tyler Gaffleone. So I went there as my top pick. And, I'm going to use Rudy Rodriguez's horse, Amore Sophia, at 5 to 1 as a little bit of a value play. I like some of the gate works coming into this. And, Rudy with a first timer is occasionally interesting. You can usually get a pretty honest price. You like the number 3, Gerland's Empire for Dallas Stewart. I like a Dallas Stewart horse later in the card, but what drew you to me to this one?
Yeah, and Dallas Stewart doesn't jump off the page to me as far as first time out, 2-year-olds. That's kind of the trainer that I think of. But there's a lot of steady works here. You're going to see John Velasquez take them out, and it just seems like she's going to have enough condition to her And you've got a couple horses that might have some question marks in the late stages because they've shown that they can be caught. So I think at a price 6-1, that's a great number. I do think that that's great value when you get a Hall of Famer like John Velasquez, and Dallas Stewart showing at about that 12% number first time starter. So I do think that there is an opportunity for this horse to have plenty of condition, plenty of works, be plenty fit and ready for this debut. Whether she can win, we'll find out. But I like 9-2 and I like 6-1. I like both those prices against the 4-5.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are few jockeys better than getting a 2-year-old to relax than Johnny Velasquez. I always love him on 2-year-olds, so you can't go wrong with a Hall of Famer there. Well, let's move on to race number 2, the Kelso, which is a grade 2, second race on the card for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile on the inner turf. And this is a 5-horse field, but I think you can make a legitimate case for probably 4 of the 5 horses in this race. A very competitive field, I think. I ultimately landed on Charlie Appleby's Mysterious Night at 8-5. I think the horse will sit kind of the right sort of trip. I think there's some early speed in the form of Call Me Harry, as well as Northern Invader, potentially Talk of the Nation, who will go out in front. I think, Flavian Pratt has kind of become Appleby's number 1 North American jockey over the last couple of months, and that's been an interesting development to see. This one, like I said, finished second last time out in the grade 3 poker, and beat some of these horses that he's going to be facing again on Tuesday. Again, another short price, and Appleby horses, you rarely ever get a big price on those ones. But you went with Carl Spackler, a little bit of a Cinderella story, maybe, if he's able to pull this one off and get the win. But a horse everybody loves the name of, for sure.
Yeah, and he always gets bet. I mean, Carl Spackler, he's going to be 2-1, and Mysterious Night does look like he's going to be the favorite, but this horse always gets bet. I mean, he's been the favorite in every start except for his debut. So the word has been out on Carl Spackler to be able to get the job done. Tyler Gaffalione, he had those wins the 5th last time out. Beaten favorite angle. Maybe I've taken a look at that. I see that they were carrying 124. Now they dropped 2 pounds. I felt like Talk of the Nation and Carl Spackler are very, very evenly matched when you take a look at them kind of running through the lane. Whether that's going to be a correct prognostication, I guess, of that race, we'll find out. But Carl Spackler, I think, can outrun rivals. It's a compact field, so we shouldn't see too much trouble. As I say that, we can find trouble in a turf race sometimes, even in these smaller fields. But I will side with Carl Spackler and maybe doesn't go off in the favorite role here. Maybe the money could come in. It's going to be close. It does look like it's between the top 3, though.
Yeah, it really does. And I do want to give a nod to Cherie DeVoe's Northern Invader. This is a horse that looked really impressive when he first switched over to the turf. And Cherie's barn is firing off on all cylinders. I mean, she's got a really live barn, particularly on the turf. And I think 5-1 is a generous price. But I'm interested. Jose Ortiz on the turf is also always dangerous. But the concern I have with this one is, A, he's going to have to get a little bit faster. And then B, again, I don't know what the pace scenario is going to be. If Call Me Harry really kind of presses Northern Invader maybe a little too much and not able to hang on. As you mentioned, Carl Spackler, very capable of passing horses. Mysterious Night, Talk of the Nation, can pass him late for sure. Well, let's move on to race number 3.
I'm gonna give myself a little mood lighting here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Just we should start playing some music in the background as well. I think that's spectacular.
There we go. There we go.
Meanwhile, I got fluorescence. I got light to spare. So, I should try to send
the viewers are going to love that. I'm sure that's going to be great. That's okay.
So race number 3, $50,000 claimer for 4-year-olds and up, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. And this was an interesting one. You went to with the number 5. I got no money at 9-2. And I think that's actually a really good value play as well for a top pick. So talk to me a little bit about what attracted you to that horse.
This is a boomer bust pick for me. I think that I got no money coming off of a long layoff like this. Irad Ortiz Jr. is seeing fit to take them out. Mike Maker does well off of a layoff like this. And yes, the horse has not been seen a while, but I think can show a little bit more speed. I would like to see this horse try to get back. I can't believe I'm saying back to these 2021 runs back in July where the horse was showing a lot of speed, but we're talking 3 years ago too. So, how much does the 7-year-old gelding have left? But to bring him back in this spot and to see that this is the spot where you want to run and you get a leading jockey like Irad Ortiz Jr. I don't play the musical chairs too much, but when he is the leading rider and he's going to be aboard a horse that has shown some back classes now coming off of a long layoff, seems to be in a pretty wide open field. I mean, I looked at this race a couple times, and I can't really hone in on, if it was a little bit if there was some moisture, Milton the Monster is a slam dunk. But if it's a dry, fast track, I think it's a bit more wide open. Who's going to be in the best form? Who's going to get into the winner's circle? I think I got no money. Gotta watch the money, maybe, right? Like, see how things are playing.
Yeah.
And if the horse is taking money, this could be one of those they knew moments. I don't know, but it just seems like I got no money, can have some speed, fresh off of a layoff. You get a rad. Maybe we get that 9-2. Maybe we get lucky.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And it's interesting. I should mention, because of the conditions of the claiming race, this horse is not in for the tag. So this horse is not eligible to be claimed. So maker's not trying to, sometimes you worry about a trainer coming back and maybe you're just trying to get the horse, in a new barn and maybe drop the horse off their roster, but that's not the case here. So running in this spot without the tag, I think, is notable. And you get, obviously, a top jockey in NYRA Ortiz Jr. I went to the number 4 Celestial Gaze at 3-1 for Jose D'Angelo. And this is one the D'Angelo barn is one I have a lot of respect for. Very consistent. I follow his racing a lot down in Gulfstream Park and Tampa Bay Downs. We saw him have a Kentucky Derby horse this year as well. So this one I'm interested in. There's not a ton of speed in this race, and I wonder if Jose Ortiz tries to get this horse maybe just a little more forward than normal, and maybe can sit more 3rd, 4th rather than 6th or 7th. And I think if you sit a little bit more forward, it might be where you want to be in this race. But I agree with you. This felt like a very wide open field. I took a look at the number 2 Poppy's Pride as a horse maybe that could go gate to wire, but I just don't know. That horse always seems to struggle hanging on that last half furlong to get the job done. Ultimately, my value play in this one was the number 7 Lost in Rome. And this one has Dylan Davis up on the mount. And this one's just been turning in a lot of solid efforts. Actually won a claiming 42 back, has been running 3rd in a couple of others, and won a claiming 54 back. So this one's been hanging around this level, getting the job done. Does lose Irad Ortiz Jr. to your pick, picks up Dylan, who had a big win, obviously, today in the Schuylerville. So interesting to see how this will end up playing out. But I agree with you. This one feels wide open. And I feel like you can absolutely try to catch a price in this one. I'm willing to try to beat the coupled entry and see where we go from there.
Okay. Yeah. Tough race out there.
Yeah, it is. So let's head to race number 4, which is $110,000 allowance race. And this is going 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up. And this is the one you mentioned earlier with regards to Illuminaire, and I'll let you get to that in a second. I ultimately went another direction. I think Illuminaire looked obviously great in debut, but always facing winners for the first time can be a little bit of a challenge. This will obviously be a tougher spot, but I went to a horse, Classic Legacy, and listen, I end up liking these types of horses way too much. The horses that just run well and run second all the time. I was infamously a fan of Midnight Bourbon for a long time, and just, these are the types of horses I love. But this one's just faced some really nice horses. I mean, Castle Warden and General Partner and Extra Niejo and Great Navigator and Tappet Trice and Litigate and going back, it really has faced a nice group of horses and has just kind of come up short in those spots a lot of times. Mott has this one looking like he's ready to fire a big race, coming off of a 48-second flat 4-furlong bullet on Independence Day. Training well in this spot, does like to come from off the pace. We did see horses be able to make up ground later in the day today on that track, so I'm not too worried about that. But you went ultimately with Illuminaire, who, like I said, has kind of a little bit of a sentimental pick for you.
Yeah, I had to actually go back and think about it, because these are the typical type of horses that you might want to play against, right? They have that big debut win, but they beat maidens in there, and now they're going to face winners. And there are horses that have won multiple races, as you were talking about. Illuminaire, if he gets back to that effort, if he can improve a little bit off of that last start, he's going to be right there in the mix. Now, he's going to be a short price, but yeah, this is the horse that I picked up. I love the price that day because I caught him around 4-1, so we did catch the value there. But I don't think he's going to be that same value, and we'll see that if he's the goods. And this is kind of the next step forward for these young horses, for Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz Jr. You're going to get that short price. I'm not keen on taking favorites, but come on, how can I play against Luminaire in this spot? I got to go right back, and I got to play my boy. This might be my a horse that I can kind of follow as far as wherever he ends up going.
I love it. No, I think that's great. I really do. And it's interesting. Todd Pletcher the other day just said, he goes, I have maidens and I have stakes horses, and I don't have much in the
Mm.
middle. And, that might say something. I mean, I know he was talking in generalities, but it might speak to his potential ideas for where Illuminaire fits later on down the road, that this is a stakes caliber runner. And this is, like you said, the next step in that progression. I will say, as a
I
value play, the
guess
number. Oh, yeah. Go ahead,
one
Chris.
thing
Yeah.
one thing I just wonder, he didn't take a ton of money in his debut, so how
Yeah.
highly touted was he in the barn? How top a prospect was he? Because from an outfit like Todd Pletcher's barn, Hall of Fame connections that obviously know how to win first time out. It's interesting that the horse is kind of a mid range 4-1 type price. So we'll see. Maybe he surprised even the connections a little bit. But City of Light's been a great sire, and we'll see if
Yeah.
Illuminaire can continue to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it sold for $500,000 at the Keeneland September sale. So there were clearly some expectations around this horse when he was
Hmm.
purchased. So you're right. Maybe he surprised a little bit based upon workouts, but has come back and worked out nicely for Pletcher since then. So I'm expecting a decent effort from Illuminaire. And you talked about a horse coming off a long layoff, and I got no money in the last race. Uncorrelated, the number one horse for Chad Brown, coming off a massive layoff as well, having last been seen in the Gotham back in 2023. 12-1. I just say you don't get 12-1 on many Chad Brown horses. And I think this one might just be worth a dart throw, maybe more underneath than anything else. But that's one who, has been throwing out some bullet workouts and has been working out nicely for Chad Brown. And what's interesting to me is he's been working out down at Monmouth, and yet Chad decides to bring him up here to run at Saratoga in a high level allowance race. And that's just an interesting decision on his part, because I'd imagine
Hmm.
there would be softer spots for him to run at in Monmouth if he wanted to bring this horse back and maybe ease him in a little bit. This feels like throwing the horse into the fire a little bit. And that, to me, that spoke to some potential confidence that Brown might have that this horse fires off the layoff. And obviously, Brown is a very competent trainer on those types of layoffs. So that was one at 12-1. Throw them in an exacta, throw them in a trifecta sort of thing, maybe a little bit more underneath. We'll see how they play. Let's head on to race number 5 on the card, which is a $110,000 allowance for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile in the 16th on the inner turf. And you went with a horse that I have been chasing and I like a lot. And that is the number 4 Hunt Ball, who's run against some really solid competition, and is 8-1, a really solid price too.
Yeah, and I think, and other handicappers have probably said this. Has he found his footing on the turf? Has he found what he would like to do? I mean, he's been running on the dirt, and now he's been on the turf in the last 2 times. It seems like it's perked him up a little bit. It seems like it's got him pointing in the right direction. And Belmont has figured, with Junior Alvarado aboard, got a chance to know him last time. He won over the synthetic at Gulfstream. Then he ran a good third there, beating the head. Excuse me. Um, and then just a very subpar effort. But I think that there's some subpar efforts in this race, and I think you have to have the entry on your ticket somewhere. I think transactional and also unit economics, they need to be on your ticket somewhere from a favorite standpoint. Now, if you want to take the stance of, I'm not going to play the favorite in here, yes, of course you can do that. Maybe you go too deep. Maybe you single Hunt Ball. Hunt Ball is not a horse that I can really trust as far as a single, though, because where's the wins?
Right.
Where is that really signature win that I can point to? Rebel Red, your choice, does have that. I thought that was a nice improved effort, and can kind of just learn how to win. And once they start to learn how to win, obviously they've done it now. Now they keep doing it. It's a tough race outside of the big favorites. I think the entry is going to take a ton of money. I like Greek Order too as your value play. That was a horse that I kept looking at. I just wasn't sure about the company he was keeping in
Yeah.
Europe, and then his okay runs when he came here. But Hunt Ball, I like the 8-1. I think you are going to get that price. Junior Alvarado sitting right next to Rebel Red. We'll see what the trip is, but I do think Hunt Ball kind of found himself on the grass.
Yeah, and I always love seeing those horses that maybe discover themselves a horse that was maybe intended for the Derby Trail a little bit based upon the company he was keeping, even though he hadn't broken his maiden yet and was running in those high level races. And then, like you said, switches to the synthetic and suddenly now perks up a little bit on the turf as well. So definitely a horse I've always liked. And if I'm going to try to beat the favorite, he's absolutely a horse I'm including on my ticket, because, I'm going to be spreading then a little bit to try to find a winner. I ultimately went to the number 3 Rebel Red for Cherie DeVoe. I already mentioned DeVoe barn. I think, is a strong one and one I have a lot of respect for. This one broke its maiden last time out, now is stepping up against winners for the first time. But this is also third back in the form cycle from a significant layoff. And I just think this horse has the opportunity to continue to improve. Came out of the Ralph Beckett barn over in Europe. So, while the company might not have been great, that's one of the top tier barns over in Europe. And so just this is a horse that was in a good spot over there and now has come over, has Jose Ortiz aboard. So it's going to sit probably a little bit more of a mid-pack trip, hopefully. And you got to love certainly you got to love the pedigree. Frankel sire with a lemon drop kid dam.
Yeah, I know. It jumps
So,
off the page.
Pretty cool.
For sure. Yeah, it jumps off the page for sure. I kept looking at the horse. I just said, I see it, but then I don't see it because I do think Hunt Ball just has the recency, has just been a little bit more consistent. If they're both going to be 8-1, I'm going to side with Belmont and Junior Alvarado. See if they can get it done.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with that at all. And Greek Order was the other one that I took a look at for Belmont, and which is the other Mont horse, and with Joel Rosario aboard and 8-1 on the price here, coming out of the Man of War distant 7th place effort, and again a one that has ran against some decent competition over in Europe, maybe not great competition. To your point earlier, it's not been overwhelming, coming over here and then running again to, Evan Harlan and Duden, Colorado and horses like that and kind of an allowance race at Keeneland, but I'm willing to give this one a shot at 8-1. I just, Rosario on the turf is always an angle that I like playing a little bit just because I think he's a wizard on there. And this one's been turning in some very solid works coming into this race for Mont. So I thought this one maybe at a big price, again, maybe more of an underneath play. If you're trying to beat the favorite, maybe one to include, but just a thought kind of on my side in that race.
I was mistaken. You were talking about Rebel Red before that with the Frankel breeding and whatnot. Yes, I agree with that point. And at that 5-1, going to be a shorter price than Hunt Ball. I thought even could go a little bit shorter because of just the way the barn is going and the way the connection. So we'll see. I think that could be a sneaky one. If you do get 5-1, that's fantastic on Rebel Red because the horse doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. If you do, it all depends on what the coupled entry does. Because you're right. If the coupled entry starts taking all the money, then the board gets an opportunity to go wonky, and that's when I think you really can find some value when everybody starts floating up to an unreasonable level. I mean, we saw that with a horse we're going to talk about a little bit later in Dadia. What happened with her on last time she ran, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you look up and she's 9-1 on the board, and you go, well, that just doesn't seem right. So let's move on to race number 6, though, and this is a $95,000 allowance for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares, and we're going 5.5 furlongs on the Mellon turf. And Chris, we finally agree. It only took 6 races. We have the same top pick, though, in the number 10 Act of Congress. And I just think this horse might be the speed of the speed. And we saw Bruce Levin have a really good debut runner today in a maiden special weight race on opening day. So that was great to see that horse get the win, Brown-Eyed Cat. And this one is, faded late last time, but now second back from a pretty substantial layoff and is shortening up just a little bit from 6 to 5.5. But that one at 5-1 really stuck out to me as an obvious play.
Yeah, controlling speed. I think that Ricardo Santana Jr. can put the horse on the lead. I think she's a 5-year-old mare that gets that, she gets to cut back in distance as well here. And so if she's able to set the tempo a little bit and she can, reach the top of the lane and say, come and catch me, who's going to really show that devastating kick to run by her at a number? I think the 5-1 is right. I think a lot of bettors are going to kind of see that as well. I have a feeling they're going to kind of take a look at Act of Congress and might think that she's going to be able to keep going, because if you go back to those 2 efforts before that last start that happened in June, she ran very well. I mean, she was doing very well in 2023 in May and June, and she won both those races, took some time off, then came back, probably needed that one, like you said, and now she steps forward and takes that other step forward on the front end. So can anybody run by her? I don't know. I couldn't figure out who, and maybe Fancy Pants Juliana is the one.
Yeah, we'll see. I agree with you. She's controlling speed. And, I think this is one of the great things when you get a big field like this on the turf, you're going to find tons of value opportunities, I think, if you can get by a couple of horses. And yeah, Fancy Juliana, 8-1 on the morning line. Again, maybe a horse just to focus on underneath for David Dock with Eric Cancel aboard. But this one, listen, I'm willing to just draw a line through all of those dirt races. And you look at the turf form, and it's solid. I mean, it's not overwhelming by any stretch. And I don't think she might be good enough to run past the leader, but she can run up into things pretty clearly, and has shown some solid progression the last couple of times, and can handle different types of turf going. And so I just thought this one at 8-1 offered a little bit of value, and maybe again more of an underneath play. But I'm with you. I think Act of Congress is the pick there, and if we get even 7-2, I'll be thrilled about that. So we'll have to.
Yeah,
Stolen
Future is going to take some action, and I think she's got speed as well. So I don't know. We'll see. If the 7 and the 10 don't go after one another too much early, I could see one of them definitely hanging on.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me, the 7 does have the ability to rate a little bit. I wonder if the 7 just kind of tries to sit, and maybe the 10 can get away with some maybe slightly softer fractions and rather running themselves into the ground.
But think about it, though. If she's inside of her, can she make that decision, I guess? It's like, does she, when they break out of the gate, and this is just as handicappers projecting what the trip is going to be like, when they break out of the gate, or at Ortiz Jr., what is he, because he's going to have to wait for the 10 to cross over if he wants to stop and move outside, or if he wants to kind of stay to the inside. So it's an interesting kind of pace scenario, obviously, on the front end, to see if those two go after one another, because the horses that want to come from behind and the stalkers, they want to see that. So we'll see.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And we should say, like, so oftentimes in these 5.5 furlong turf sprints, I don't want to say the race is decided in the first 100 yards, but there's so much. I mean, just if you catch a flyer out of the gate, if you just break a half step slow, the race is over. So oftentimes it's hard to overcome that in these really short turf sprints. And so you're right. Depending on how the 7 and 10 break, that could have a huge impact on IRAD's strategy. And so, that could absolutely have a lot to play there, obviously, in that race. So let's move on to race number 7. We got another maiden special weight race. This is $100,000 for 2-year-olds, and we got it going 5.5 furlongs on the dirt. And we went in a couple of different directions here, but I think that just speaks to how wide open this field is in a lot of ways. You ultimately went to the number 4 Floodlights at 8-1. Talk to me a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I didn't plan for that light to turn on as Floodlights was the selection in here. That was kind of cool, actually, how that affected something. I've got a whole Illuminaire light thing going on with the lighting and the whole thing. Anyway, the thing that you respect so much about Wesley Ward trainees, and something that I continue to see, I'm picking City of Light a lot on the card too, but his horses break so well from the gate. And as I say this, we'll see how this 2-year-old does break out, but they just are always prepared to just shoot right out of there. It just seems like they're so professional, and they pop out of the gate and then they get going. Jose Ortiz, riding in great form right now, I think, has just been, rock solid across the board on 2-year-olds, any type of horse. I'm doing it for quite some time, but I really like that bullet work that we see back in June. I like the works coming into this race, very steady works. I like the gate drill coming into the race. And we're going to talk 8-1 on a Wesley Ward trainee as a 2-year-old. $375,000 purchase. I mean, it just seems like a lot makes sense. And I do think I trust the 4 to break well. Like, I trust Wesley Ward to have the 4 break well out of the gate. So as we were just talking about in that last race, the turf race, I want a horse that's going to get good track position early, especially the 2-year-old, because who knows what's going to go on in behind with 2-year-olds. They're all learning this. They're all doing it. Some of them most of them for the first time. So if I can break well from the gate, if I can get controlling speed, and I get a Wesley Ward trainee, and he's obviously shown that he can win with these 2-year-olds, and you're going to give me 8-1, I'm on board.
Yeah, I think this one, I think you might be able to keep an honest price on this horse just because of how limited the work tab is, that you only have 4 registered works. But you're right, that first one just pops off the page, 47 flat gate work. That's, the first official one for the horse. So I agree with you that's a horse that's dangerous. And if you get that price, that's going to be, I think, a really good one. And you're absolutely right that Wesley's horses always break well. You mentioned something that, though, I wanted to pick up with my top selection, Munson, the number 7 horse, who actually did not break particularly well in debut and was off a little bit slow in that race, but has experience now. And that's something which, now going against a bunch of horses that you mentioned, a lot of these are first-time starters. I do tend to value horses that have a little bit of experience. I think we saw that play out a little bit today, actually, in that maiden race I alluded to earlier with Strong State. holding off a first-time Brad Cox runner. And you just saw that maturity and the professionalism. Second time out, a little bit more, just comfortable with the surroundings and that sort of thing. So Munson at 6-1 for Tom Amos, Tyler Gaffleone aboard. This one was, like I said, off a little slow at Churchill, but showed up the ability to make a lot of ground. And I'll be honest, that is not a track where you make up a lot of ground a lot of times, especially in these 2-year-old maiden races where they are off with a bullet. So I thought that one was a little bit interesting, again, at 6-1. And then I mentioned that I like a Dallas Stewart horse earlier. This is the one that I kind of like. Tough Catch at 8-1. Louis Saez aboard. This one has some nice works. Again, some nice gate works as well. Is going to have to get out effectively. I usually don't like the inside rail for these 2-year-old sprints at all. But this one has shown good speed coming out of the gate. I thought at 8-1, a little bit of an interesting price. The Dam has produced 2 first-out winners. Complexity has been an effective first crop sire as well. We talk a lot about Vekoma and how effective that's been, but I think this one's also been, Complexity's been solid. So those were some thoughts that I had in this race, but this one feels wide open if you want to try to catch a price.
And if you watch a lot of races, you know the connections. You start building your stories around why you're selecting this horse. Like I just gave you the reasons why I like Floodlights. You can say the Tom Amos trainee and Munson. You can kind of point to different horses that you may have seen from Tom Amos that did improve like that off of maybe a bad start in the first race. A Steve Asmussen trainee in the 5 that improves vastly in the second time out. Down at the bottom, the coach, the innovator, the 9, Joel Rosario aboard that first effort, just throw that out. Now really cranked up and ready to go second time out. So these are very familiar connections, very familiar ways that we've seen 2-year-olds come into these races. And this is why it's handicapping. This is why if you're correct, then you get the return, right? I mean, if you're correct that day, that's what the return is. So I should say good luck to all the players, no matter what. I know whoever's been watching and checking it out. I know the lighting thing. There's a rabbit running back and forth. That's why that light's turning on. But this is a good moment to thank those bettors that do get involved, because it's a grind, and sometimes you're handicapping and you want to try and find these winners, and hopefully we're helping you find some. But the bettors do a great job, and I love their selections. They come after you sometimes, but it's because they're passionate about it and they want their horse to win. So it's very understandable. So I just want to make sure while I'm on here in this lovely setting that I'm in, that I thank the bettors while I'm on here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there would be, as the movie in Let It Ride says, there would be no sport without the bettors. I mean, so you gotta have those who are playing. And I think one of the things we try to do with this show is we try to connect you to a little bit of price picks. And so there are times we give you chalk, but there's also a lot of times we give you some alternatives. And even if it's just something to think about and something to chew on, if you look at a favorite and you go, is this favorite beatable? Well, maybe so. Maybe these are a couple of horses to consider using in different ways. So I know it's funny. I have a guy who follows me on Twitter, and I give out my long shot of the day every day. And he always puts a place bet on my long shot of the day. He doesn't have enough confidence in me to put a win bet down, but he puts a place bet down every day. And I appreciate that. And he writes to me every day when he hits. And I'm like, that's good. I'm glad. Or when he doesn't. So it's always
Matthew, you're doing a great job. You and the team are doing a fantastic job. It's great to work with you guys, and we still got plenty of races to talk about. But this is a good moment for sure. You guys are doing the content; it's all great. Love the direction, and it's good stuff. Hopefully, we find some winners though. I do want to have a little bit of.
Yeah, we
can't go over 12. If we go over 12.
Well, the good news is we have enough difference in our top picks that I think it's almost statistically impossible for us to go over 12. One of us is going to have a good day, and the other one might go over 12, but we'll see. But listen, let's head on to race number 8, which is another $100,000 maiden special weight race, and this one is for 3-year-olds and up, and this is going 7 furlongs on the dirt. And listen, 7 furlongs for maidens is always a tricky distance, I think, and you never know what you're going to get. Some of these horses are probably going to be better at 6, 6.5. Others might be better at a mile or 2 turns. I ultimately went to a horse for John Ortiz, a trainer I just have a lot of respect for, Jose Ortiz aboard. And this is one who made up a ton of ground after a bad start last time out at Churchill. Again, a track where you typically don't see horses make up a lot of ground. Didn't attract a ton of money in debut. Went off at 7-1 that day, but like I said, made up ground, finished second. Ortiz doesn't have the greatest numbers second start off the bench or second start for maidens, and has the inside rail, needs to clean up that start. But I thought at 5-1 presented a little bit of an interesting price in this one, and a horse that could have a potential room for improvement if this one is able to get off a little bit more effectively. You went with a big price, though, as your top selection, Escondido at 10-1. I definitely took a long look at this one, so talk to me about it.
Yeah, so this is me thinking that Illuminaire might be a key race. If Illuminaire does very well second time out, if I see a strong performance there, then I'm really going to be on board with Escondido. But I do think, when you watch some of those races too, you want to find those key races and you feel like, okay, maybe this is one where the runners in behind are going to be able to progress and they're also going to break their maidens very quickly. If that does happen, then we're in the money, obviously. I like the blinkers going on. I like Mark Hennig teaming up with John Velasquez. Connections I trust. I like the post as well. We'll see how the rail is playing. I know you picked some of the rail runners in there, so that'll be kind of an interesting thing to follow along as far as Saturday is concerned. But Escondido, I think Mark Hennig improving second time out. The numbers are not as strong as kind of I remember, but it's one of those things that from a handicapping standpoint, like you tend to remember sometimes like, oh yeah, I remember I had that Mark Hennig horse that was second time out, and sometimes there's those personal stats that you remember. So I like it. I like some of the changes that are made, and only 4 lengths off of Illuminaire, who I think is going to be the goods earlier on the program. Why not take a shot there with the 10-1? And then when I took a look at Commuted, the connections. I mean, it's Ken McPeak, second time out, Brian Hernandez Jr., obviously Mystic Dan. They were able to get Torpedo Anna. I mean, the rich get richer as far as that connection goes. And a horse that can improve second time out and can be 5-1. So I like both of them. I would have both of those on my ticket, 5 and 7.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the 7. I ultimately went with a different choice as a value play simply to have something a little bit different from you. But I agree with you about Commuted. Really like this one quite a bit. And I think that's one who I mentioned 7 furlongs being a tricky distance, ran 7 furlongs last time out and looked really good doing it. So I think the distance is not going to be something where this horse is caught between what it wants to do, which can sometimes happen at 7 furlongs. I took a look at a horse that has a little bit more experience and hasn't gotten the job done yet. And that's Reynolds Channel, the number 4, I should say, at 6-1. Blinkers are coming off this horse who has shown some speed earlier. You get Junior Alvarado aboard for Belmont. And it's interesting. I don't play the blinkers off angle that much, but I do think it's interesting on this horse to take the blinkers off. There's been, this horse has shown decent early speed, but was by no stretch a speed ball by any ways. But maybe this horse finally has figured out how to relax. They want this horse to just, calm down a little bit more when they race. Also cutting back 2 7 furlongs from going 1 mile and an eighth, 1 mile and a 16th the last couple of times out, and also notice fading the last couple of times out as well. So I think the cutback might be beneficial for this one, and maybe can come from off the pace a little bit more or track the pace rather than trying to get up on the lead and maybe wear himself out in that regard. So that'll be an interesting one. But another race where I think you can try to find a pretty nice price here. And I think these maiden special weight races, we've gone largely towards away from favorites in all of these races. And I think there's a reason for that. So, but it just speaks to the depth of these maiden special weight races at Saratoga in particular.
Yeah. And I think that you find yourself, it's very difficult to go 12 for 12. It's very difficult to go 5 for 12. It's very difficult to go 1 for 12. So if I'm going to be right at least one time out of the 12, at least let me catch a bit of a price to be able to make a score, right? And so I think that that's where the betting comes into play when you start taking a look at your wagers and how you're playing your tickets and whatnot. And I know you guys have done extensive coverage on putting tickets together and building your tickets and whatnot. And that's so key because it can just take that one race that really, really, how many times do you hear it? People say, that one race made my day, and made my whole weekend. You know what I mean? So when you're right, make sure you get paid and get paid well when you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, couldn't agree more. All you have to do is beat a favorite once, maybe twice in a sequence, and suddenly that's a huge couple $1,000 payout. And it doesn't take much. And you don't even need a huge bomb sometimes. You don't need 44-1. You just need a 6-1, an 8-1, a 10-1 to get home once or twice. And like you said, your day's made. So
when you get 44 when you get 44 to 1s, you're Sarah El Badwi.
Yeah, you are indeed. And we can only wish to be Sarah.
How
And
good is she?
so,
Man, she is just
oh,
dialed in. She's
I,
fantastic. Very good handicapper. Very good
she's a
handicapper.
very good handicapper, and she's an annoying roommate to have because she
Well,
rubs it in my face whenever I come home.
well,
But no,
nobody, nobody's perfect.
no, she's great. She's fantastically gracious about all
She's the
that, but
best. She's the best.
she really is. So, and I am learning to become less timid, and and she swings for the fences, and when she hits big, and I have a lot of respect for that and the
So
way
you
she
have to
does
do.
it.
What you have to do.
Yeah, this is a perfect segue because look at me being conservative and look at you taking a 15-1 shot in this next race. Race number 9, $62,000 optional claimer for 3-year-old and up, going a mile and a 16th on the Mellon Turf Course. You went to the number 11. Bring me a check, and this one for Mike Baker, 15-1, bombs away. What drew you to this one a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm taking a look at first off the claim. That's the first thing that I'm taking a
Yep.
look at here because you've got Mike Maker now claiming a horse for 62.5. So it's a significant tag. We've seen Mike Maker claim for right around this price tag before, so that's nothing different. But 3 starts back, a 5th beaten 4.5 behind Spirit of St. Louis, who I have ultimate respect for,
Yeah.
has been just a very, very strong runner on the grass. Um, and that was against the open company, obviously, in the Dangerous Hour. Now was sprinting in the last 2 starts, came out of a pretty quick race there, 6 beaten 3, and now is going to go back to a 2-turn distance, which I think is more his game. I mean, you take a look at the 7-year-old gelding with Manny Franco and an outside draw, 7 lifetime wins, 7 seconds, and 14 thirds. A lot of those minor slices has been over the Saratoga turf course now 4 times with a second and 2 thirds. There's a lot of minor slices in there, but I think in this field, you're going to find some minor slices. I mean, there's just horses that who has really shown you that they are just proven winners. I guess Georgie W
Right.
probably stands out a little bit. I mean, some of those first 2 wins and then the Indiana Derby run and then a good third last time off of the layoff. So it's just hard for me to trust anybody. You went with the 8 and Irish Aces, a horse that I did look at. I was just worried about that. The form kind of coming in. I know the grade 2,
Yeah.
grade 3 tries is what jumps off the page, and he may just be the classiest of the bunch, and he wins. I mean, this could be
Yeah.
one of those overthinking races where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get creative, and then the favorite you chalk out. So, but bring me a check. I think decent runs against some pretty good horses. I think gets back to what he wants to do. I think going the 2 turns, he's won at the distance, so why not take a shot? Take a big shot at 15-1.
I love it. No, I think that's great. And I did land on Irish Aces. Obviously, the recent form in the grade 2s, the grade 3s. What impressed me about this horse is going back, breaking the maiden, immediately stepping up against winners and allowance company, winning then, and then stepping up and just seems to maybe not quite be a stakes level horse or is more of just a stakes place type of horse, one to finish third, one to kind of run up and kind of get a minor award in stakes races. Now dropping back into a $62,000 optional claimer. I just think maybe this is the right level for this horse. Obviously, it's going to be a short price. That's kind of the drawback. The buyer speed figures have been, solid coming out of that company, and certainly has done nothing wrong against some very good horses like Ottoman Fleet and I'm Very Busy and Running Bee and Never Explained. But it is. I do think that has a little something to prove. I will say the Brendan Walsh, Tyler Gaffleone angle is one that I do tend to trust a lot on the turf in particular. Those two are just so dynamite together, winning at almost a 30% clip. So those are 2 that when I see them team up on the turf, I usually have a little bit more confidence in those horses with what Brendan has. So we'll see. You mentioned Georgie W. That's one of my value plays at 8-1. This is a horse getting the blinkers off, second back from an extensive layoff. But you mentioned showed a little something last time on the turf, coming back from that nearly 11-month layoff, and has a lot of speed and now gets the blinkers off. Interesting decision to do that, but more importantly, it tracks Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, which I thought was the most notable thing. And interesting to see whether or not this horse tries to go to the front again with the blinkers off, or maybe tries to relax and rate a little bit. But this horse, second back from that layoff, might be able to take another step forward from that 86 buyer speed figure last time. And if he's able to do that, then might be able to, end up in the winner's circle at a nice price. So, trying to find maybe a little bit of value, even if I do kind of like Irish Aces as my top pick. But these turf courses are and turf fields are always so wide open and
Oh
always a
my
good
God.
opportunity to try to catch your price.
Oh my gosh. I looked through some of these races. I said, I don't have a clue. I mean, you can make so many different,
Yeah.
you can come up with so many different ideas and so many different ways. You just have to be right. Who's going to be right on that day and who's going to get to the winner's circle? That's the name of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of a field that is wide open, race number 10, the grade one Diana for 4-year-old nut filly and mares going a mile and an eighth on the inner turf course. And this is a stacked field, a field of 10. Yes, 5 of them might be trained by Chad Brown, but your morning line favorite is not. And that is number 4, Didia, who is coming off to some extent, you could say like a career victory, getting her first grade one win for Ignacio Correas IV in that New York Stakes during the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival up at Saratoga. And I ultimately went with the Chad horse. I went with White Beam. And this is a horse that I just, third time back in the form cycle, I think is going to be running maybe the best at this point. I always love Flavian on the turf, and that's who's going to be the jockey, Flavian Pratt. And this is one who should be sitting presumably just off the pace of Evie Jets. I think those two will be able to set modest fractions or in this race. I don't see anybody really pushing the two of them in any way. It's just whether or not they want to push each other, and I don't see that happening necessarily. It'll be interesting to see whether or not this turf course plays well to front runners or to closers. We obviously were not able to run on the turf on opening day, so we'll have to kind of see how that evolves over the course of the Saratoga meet. But you were down at Aqueduct for the end of the Belmont of the Big A, and that was a track that started playing very well to front end speed, I would argue. You saw horses like Trickery and others who kind of sat that very close tracking trip and stalking trip and were able to close or able to hold on, I should say, going 2 turns. So I went with White Beam. You went with a Chad Brown horse that I feel like is up and coming and obviously won last time out, got that grade 1 in the Just a Game. But I feel like Chili Flag's become kind of a sneaky top Chad Brown horse out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I really liked White Beam actually in her last start. The start you were just talking about at Saratoga and the Just a Game. And yeah, I thought it was an okay second. Can she improve off of that effort and win? Of course.
Yeah.
I went back and watched Chili Flag, and I've watched her now. The race that she ran at Saratoga, obviously, the race that she ran at Churchill, coming off of the layoff. Rat Ortiz Jr., first of all, fits this horse perfectly. If you take a look at some of the efforts, and this is no knock on the other riders that have been aboard, it's Jose Ortiz and Flavian Pratt. For whatever reason, Rat Ortiz Jr., look, he's a nose and 3/4 of a length away, right, from being undefeated on her. So he knows how to ride this 5-year-old mare. If you watch her, those 2 efforts, if you watch the Churchill race and you watch the race at the Just a Game at Saratoga, she just has her stride and the way that she glides. And this is where the track announcer really comes out in me and I thought about this when I was handicapping, because I said, I've seen a lot of these horses. You kind of believe your eyes a lot of times outside of just the handicapping. She's one that fits that category for me. And people may yell at you like, oh, we're talking about speed and what, yeah, of course. But the way that she was traveling and the way that she just travels through the lane, you could see all the other rivals in that Just a Game. They were accelerating, but she was just accelerating at a much more rapid pace. And she did the same thing at Churchill. It was a real wide run for her. And she didn't look like she was going to really pick up the leaders, and she did. And she just kept going. I think that she's a standout for me. Now, Didia has to come back a little bit. Didia's going to have to regress off of that last effort. Didia has not gotten a ton of, she's gotten respect. I'll say she's gotten respect. Kind of a win-loss pattern. You take a look at her last few efforts. She has a win, she has a loss, she has a win, she has a loss. She had that big effort in the New York. She proved that she is a top tier, top class, grade 1 type mare. Is she going to come back a little bit? I'm not saying bounce, because I don't think grade 1 horses like that are going to really bounce. But if she comes back just a little bit to the field, they can catch her in this race. They can look her in the eye and maybe run by. The only one that I really feel like is talented enough to do that, though, right now at this stage of the game, is Chili Flag. So I'm not crazy about the 10 post, but I think that she handles a wide journey just fine. And if she gets rolling the same way that she's done in her last 2 starts, it'll be close at the wire, but I think she wins. So I like the 9-2. I like the connections, and I agree with you. I think she's kind of the up and coming rising star for the barn in a in
Yeah,
a in
it's
a
so
barn full of stars.
exactly, in a loaded barn.
Yeah.
Because I think it's in her trajectory, and I wrote about this on NYRA Bets and our race of the week analysis that you can get on the app or on the website. And I wrote about you just don't see a lot of Chad Brown horses that are European shippers who take 5 or 6 races to run against optional claiming and allowance company. A lot of times when Chad brings over a Euro shipper, they're immediately going into a grade 3 or a listed stakes race, or they're in a big time spot. And the fact that she took a while to kind of get going and mature and just kind of continue to progress and develop, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, she wins their first stakes race. Then suddenly Chad puts her into the Pegasus Filly and Mare Invitational. Then suddenly she's rattled off 3 straight graded stakes wins, and it just feels like she's kind of flown under the radar somehow. And you can even see that. I mean, while she's attracted some attention, she went off as the favorite in the Honey Fox. She was 4-1, 4-1 the last 2 times out, and obviously 9-2 in the morning line in a very competitive field. And so you'll probably get a very honest price on her. And Dadia. Listen, she's very, very good, very consistent horse, never really turns in a bad effort. But I do wonder, she had kind of the perfect trip, I think, last time. So I do think there might be a little bit of regression from that effort. And I think, certainly a 7-2 favorite just speaks to just how wide open this field is. One of the angles that I'm just always going to be a sucker for is Grand Motion with Johnny Velasquez aboard. And that's why I talk about Mission of Joy here. At 10-1, this is a horse that just finished right behind Chili Flag and White Beam as well. And if you look at White Beam at 4-1, I mean, this one was a head worse last time out and is more than double the price. So from a value standpoint, the value's there for this horse, and it has decent speed early to sit a few different types of trips, depending on what Johnny V wants to do there. Is unlikely to kind of go with the leaders by any stretch, but could absolutely sit more of a pocket trip on the inside and then kind of tilt out and see where it goes. Turning for home, horse has some nice turn of foot late, but Graham Motion's a trainer that I always trust, particularly on the turf. I know he places his horses in spots where he knows they can be successful. So I think 10-1 on this horse felt like a generous price, and one I'm interested in using in a couple different ways. So
great race, great grade 1 race, just such a good race. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't even bring up a horse like Gino Romantica, who's third off the layoff. And I think, that's usually when she runs her best race. And, you got just a slew of dynamite horses in this one. Fluffy Socks, everybody's favorite second place finisher. You even have a horse like, Nisi Marie for Butch Reed, who that's a horse that just seems to keep getting better too all the time at 12-1. So, loaded field, and can't wait for this one on Saturday.
Great race.
Yeah, let's head on to the penultimate race on the card, which is race number 11, the Grade 3 Sanford Stakes for 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And listen, I went to the inside rail again, which may or may not be a good idea because you're right, depending on how the rail's playing, those might need to be adjusted selections to some extent, if it's good or otherwise. I went to Mentee. You don't often break a track record every day is in a debut race, but that's exactly what Mentee did in debut. Granted, only won by a nose over Colloquial, a very good Vacoma baby for George Weaver. But I think, Mentee, obviously the full sibling to Fierceness, and is going to get a lot of attention because of that. All the same connections, Rapoli, Pletcher, Velasquez. I mentioned earlier how much I trust Velasquez on a 2-year-old, particularly a 2-year-old on the lead. And literally, I think if anybody else was on this horse, I would probably try to go to your top pick, Studley Do-Right, who I really, really like a lot. I just have so much confidence in Velasquez that it just makes me tilt towards Mentee in this spot at 6-5. But your top pick, Studley Do-Right, I mean, what a run last time out. That was such an impressive effort, I thought, in the Dream Model.
Yeah, and I felt like there's room for improvement. I mean, there's just room for him to continue to move forward off of that last effort, and that's why I selected him in here, because I've got a horse that is proven against winners. Has won against Stakes Company, has won over the surface. and seems to be just coming in very strongly into this race. Just seems to be, getting right back onto the racetrack, gets a chance to do his thing. He works out. You see that June 22nd work, then he had a July 6th work, both over at Laurel. Now he comes back here to Saratoga. We'll see how he ships. But, if I'm going to get 7-2 still on the promise of Mentee, of course, 6-5, you're going to see a short number because he could be racing's next star. I think the audience is split on how they viewed that maiden race, right? You either were saying that Mentee was kind of coming back to the rest of the field, or colloquial was just rolling and flying and was maybe the one that you felt stronger about out of that effort. So I think that the audience was a little bit split there on who they liked coming out of that race. I don't know if that's fair to say. I feel like it's fair to say. I mean, it seems like the
Oh
audience
yeah.
is kind of back and forth about the first and second place finisher. But Studley Do Right, he just kind of keeps checking the boxes. I hate to
Yeah.
say it, but what has he done wrong? Kind of right now,
Yeah.
he just seems to kind of show up. The X-Man Xavier Perez has done a nice job with him. He seems to fit him very well. So, and you're going to get 7-2. He's not going to be favored off of two undefeated, very strong efforts, and he can also sit just off of it. He doesn't need to
Yep.
be up there. We're gonna see. I don't want to say we're going to see a hot pace, but we should see some front end speed. Moplex, the outside runner, he's the big question
Yeah.
mark. That's why we both have him as a value play.
Yeah. No, one thing I'll say, I lived in Northern Virginia for several years before I started working up here at NYRA. Used to go to Laurel Park
Mm-hmm.
all the time. John Robb, great horseman down there in Maryland. And, people who follow New York racing might not know him very much or might not see a lot of his runners. But listen, you go down to Maryland, usually it's him and Brittany Russell duking it out for a leading trainer down there at Laurel or Pimlico or some of these other mid-Atlantic tracks. So he's the one who knows how to get horses ready. And I love that he's bringing this one right back up here to run in this spot. And I love that he's keeping the X-Man aboard as well. So that's great. I always love when, you don't suddenly try to go for an upgrade when you're running in a grade 3 and you stick with your local
Right.
guy who's gotten you here. And so it's good karma in that regard. And definitely a horse. And I should mention that, that was even a horse that there was some, he even had to navigate some traffic in the stretch in that last race in the Tremont and was able to do it. And I agree with you, could continue to move forward off that effort. We both like Moplex as a value play. Obviously, a huge win against State Bred Company last time out in debut. Keeps Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard for Jeremiah Englehart. I think the outside post is very advantageous in terms of being able to judge what everybody is doing and seeing, how fast does Mentee go out and then maybe sitting just off of that pace and, seeing what to do. But at 6-1, I thought that was a horse that was a little bit interesting in this race and could continue to move forward from a speed figure standpoint too in the second start.
Yeah, and this is one of those, everybody's looking to see kind of what they've got. This is, you take a look at the two, Mr. Squeaky Wheels, he's coming from Presque Isle off of a synthetic tribe. Baby Duke's coming from Parks, coming from PA.
Yeah.
Let's kind of see what we have as our 2-year-old here. And then you see the horses that were coming from Belmont at Aqueduct. And then, Studley Do Right. And then you got a horse coming from Churchill. So they're coming from all over to see, okay, let's match up and let's see how we stack up against the top 2-year-olds, possibly in the country. So good race, another good race, exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, last year in the Sanford, I believe it was Yo-Yo Candy won that one at, I think, want to say 47-1 or something like that. And
Yeah.
the real kicker is just a very quick aside. I handicapped this race and I did a capping the card for it on my previous YouTube channel with the guys on Trust the Profits. And I gave out Yo-Yo Candy. And then, like a knucklehead, I was packing up all of my belongings to move to New York. And I looked down at my phone and it just said race off. And I go, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And I pull up the video just as Yo-Yo Candy crosses the finish line first. And I was like, I am so not happy right now.
Yeah. Don't show me
the
the don't show me the 90-something plus dollar mutual return on that
right.
one, please. Thank you.
Exactly.
Hide that immediately.
Exactly. And meanwhile, everybody's tweeting at me, hey, great pick, great pick, great pick. And I'm like, yeah, I'm thrilled some other people cashed on it. I just didn't, so.
Very quick story from me too, then.
Yeah.
Long time ago. My mom had called me and liked the horse. My dad actually liked the horse that same year. They both liked Giacomo in the Kentucky Derby. And I talked them both off of like betting heavy. Like, I think it was like I think I was like two to cross. I mean, I still laugh about that to this day because I can see him rolling down the stretch, and it's like, yep, I talked him out of putting, I don't know, $100, 100 to win on the horse, something like that. And, unbelievable.
Yeah, those are the ones that stick with you. Those are the
What
ones
a
you
game.
remember.
What a game. What a game.
Exactly. What a game. Well, listen, let's close out with a nice winner, and let's close out with some nice picks here in the last one. Race 12, $35,000 optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going 5.5 furlongs on the Mellon Turf Course. And this was one where, another deep competitive turf field. I feel like you could go in a lot of different directions. I ultimately went to Mike Maker and Rhythm Nick at 9-2. This was one, Ricardo Santana Jr. up on the mount. What's so interesting to me about this horse is horse was running on the dirt, gets claimed by Maker, who immediately moves this horse onto the turf, which is such a token Mike Maker move of taking a dirt horse and putting him immediately on the turf. And it was so interesting to me that Chris Landeros kind of took back on a horse that had showed a lot of speed previously on the dirt. And now you get Ricardo Santana Jr. aboard. And one thing that I know about Ricardo is he's going to go. And so I'd imagine this horse will revert back to what this horse kind of showed on the dirt, because the horse still ran a decent race on the turf, against $80,000 optional claiming competition at Churchill. So maybe taking a little bit of a step back in terms of the purse money. And it's interesting to me. Obviously, he's in for the tag for 35, which might be a little bit of a red flag, but that was my top pick. You went to the number 730, who I considered for my value play at 6-1. I really like this one quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how he stacks up against horses of these caliber coming off of 25 non-2 at Gulfstream over the synthetic. He's shown a ton of speed. He's shown, a 20-3 opening quarter. He's only a length off of it at Gulfstream on the grass. I mean, he's obviously fast. Is that speed going to translate here at Saratoga? So I saw him as in form. Maybe he's got some speed. Maybe there's some question marks all around on this field. This is another one of those. It's a tough race. I mean, you can come up with so many different conclusions. And these mid-range price horses, I could see them floating up. I could see them, coming down just a touch. This is I could have given you probably 3 more top selections if I really, really made a case. But I'm just saying, okay, if I'm going to give you one selection in this race, maybe we're controlling speed. Maybe we get out there. Maybe I can hang on here in the nightcap. Jose Ortiz wins it at 6-1. I can see it. I'm not sure how the 25 non-2 and some of those 25 races just kind of stack up against the group.
Yeah, no, it was interesting because I would argue there's speed and then there's Gulfstream speed, and Gulfstream just has a whole other level of speed on the turf sometimes.
Okay.
are just freakishly fast. And you're right though;
Sure.
It does depend. How does it translate to another track when they leave South Florida? Does that speed translate? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But a little bit baked into the price at 6-1 there on the morning line. My value play, hey Mac, it's Jack at 8-1. This is one second back from a 13-month layoff, and I thought ran pretty well last time out in a state bred allowance race, and now dropping into a optional claimer going the same distance, and optional claimer 35. And I thought this one showed a nice turn of foot last time, and again, second off that really significant layoff is an angle that I've ended up using a couple of times on this card. It's not one I lean on all the time, but there are just some really intriguing horses that I think have the opportunity to move forward in their second start. This is one of them. And again, 8-1 in the morning line, Junior Alvarado aboard this time. And I think you can see an improvement from that 74 buyer speed figure. But like you, I think this is one where, there is going to be, you can make a very strong case for, 4 or 5 different horses in this field very easily. So going to be a fun one to close things out. And Chris, I just want to say thank you for braving the elements as it's gotten darker and darker with you. Really appreciate you tuning in.
It turned really creepy, and I apologize for that. But I mean, it's a gorgeous night actually outside right now. Like you haven't been able to really step outside. I'm still on the East Coast, but it was fun, man. It was fun to jump on, and I got to get a little bit better setting. I'm sure I might get kind of crushed a little bit of whatever this is going on here, but I think the light works, and
they're going to love it.
We gave out enough selections. Hopefully, we found a winner. But again, I don't get a chance to thank the fans and the viewers. I hope I do it enough, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate everybody that has welcomed me to New York, and looking forward to some great racing at Saratoga, and hope you guys do your thing, rock it, enjoy it, have some safe trips, and hopefully cash some tickets and keep wagering and keep chirping at us once in a while on the social media social media landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We love having you up here. I love having you up here in New York. You've been such a great addition. Love all of the calls and just love the energy you bring to everything. So I really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me today and talking with the bettors out there who are watching this, and appreciate everybody tuning in. Chris, obviously, you got the summer off. I of course I put you to work your first week on vacation.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. And so, although Andy Serling did say, because I got Andy to do a video, and he goes, "You better be coming up with some nice Christmas gifts for everybody this year, Matthew." And so, I said, all right, I'll work on it. But what are you doing this summer? Are you just hanging out? Are you going to be up at Saratoga at all? Are you going to be kind of at some different tracks, or kind of just enjoying some time off?
Yeah, so I always say I'm not going to go to another. You're going to try and get away from horse racing, and we always end up going to a track or something, and you hook up with somebody or connect with somebody, have dinner, and I'd love to get up to Saratoga and come hang out and just see what's going on. But I've got things to keep me busy during the week, and so I've still got some of the weekday work, and then I can take some weekends off. It'll be nice to see what Saturdays and Sundays are like as a normal person walking around. What do you go to the store or something like that, or kind of mosey around do people go to the mall anymore? Is that a thing? Like, do you go to the mall? You don't, right?
No, I have no idea. Like, I'm the same way as you. I have no idea what people do on the weekend anymore. I know what I do on Mondays and Tuesdays. Right. Yeah. And I feel. Yeah, right. I feel like such a weirdo walking around on Monday and Tuesday running errands like at 10 a.m. and everybody else is like in work clothes and I'm looking like a bum. But yeah, I
gotta say, my life is sounding awesome. I'm standing here in the dark. I'm talking about no plans on the weekend, trying to figure out what I'm doing. Boy, oh boy, what a glamorous life we lead.
Don't you know it? You can't ask for anything better. So, Chris, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, all of you who are watching out there. Make sure to press that like button. Make sure to subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube. For Chris Griffin, my name is Matthew DeSantis. Wishing you a great and profitable day at the races. And reminding you, friends, it's now post time.